In the churning waters of the South China Sea, power meets defiance, warships maneuver, warnings fly. And a small nation stands tall, caught between empires, rewriting its fate. Tensions spiked in the South China Sea on October 17th as China launched military exercises near the disputed Scarborough Shoal, coinciding with the final day of Sama-Sama, joint naval drills between the United States, the Philippines, and several allies. Beijing's Maritime Safety Administration said the military training would take place from noon to 7 p.m. southwest of the shoal, warning vessels to avoid the area. The timing was conspicuous, coming as Sama-Sama, which began on October 6th, wrapped up after 12 days of live-fire, anti-submarine and air defense drills involving Japan, Canada and France. The Philippine news agency said the exercise aimed to reinforce coordination and enhance preparedness in joint defense scenarios. But China's countermaneuver appeared calculated. On October 16th, Beijing claimed to have expelled 2 Philippine reconnaissance aircraft near the shoal, with Coast Guard spokesperson Liu Dejun saying the action was carried out in accordance with laws and regulations.
We solemnly warn the Philippines to immediately cease its acts of infringement, provocation, and inflammatory rhetoric.
The Philippines, however, painted a very different picture. Its Coast Guard reported that one of its aircraft was subjected to aggressive interference by a Chinese helicopter and a J-16 fighter jet during a routine flight over the shoal. The encounter was filmed and shared on social media.
Such actions pose a clear and unacceptable risk to the safety of our personnel and the journalists embedded on the mission.
Washington swiftly condemned Beijing's actions.
We stand with our ally, the Philippines, as they confront China's dangerous actions, which undermine regional stability.
Meanwhile, Vietnam weighed in diplomatically. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Pham Thu Hang reiterated Hanoi's sovereignty over the Truong Sa, Spratly Islands and called on all parties to respect international law and act with restraint.
Vietnam urges all parties to act responsibly and respect the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea to maintain peace, stability and safety in the East Sea.
The growing confrontation with China has forced Manila to rethink its long-standing reliance on Washington. For decades, the Philippines' defense posture was defined by its alliance with the United States. The 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, the 1998 Visiting Forces Agreement, and the 2014 Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement formed the foundation of that partnership. Those agreements gave the US access to key Philippine bases and shaped much of the country's military strategy. But as Chinese assertiveness in the South China Sea intensified, Manila began to look for new partners. A small but significant step came in 2007 when the Philippines signed a status of Visiting Forces Agreement with Australia, another US ally. It was meant to regulate the legal standing of foreign troops engaged in joint exercises. Then came the Duterte years 2016 to 2022. President Rodrigo Duterte sought a thaw with Beijing, downplaying the landmark 2016 International Tribunal ruling that invalidated China's maritime claims. In 2020, he even threatened to terminate the VFA with the United States, calling it a one-sided arrangement. But the strategy backfired. China continued its aggressive maneuvers in disputed waters, proving that diplomatic concessions did not soften its posture. Recognizing the futility of accommodation, Duterte reversed his decision in July 2021 after meeting then US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, restoring the VFA. When President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. took office in June 2022, he continued rebuilding the alliance, but with broader ambitions. In April 2023, he expanded the EDCA to grant US access to 4 additional sites. A month later, he signed the bilateral defense guidelines to modernize cooperation. Yet Marcos's true innovation lies in his pursuit of networked deterrence, maintaining strong US ties while weaving a web of partnerships across the Indo-Pacific. The first breakthrough came in November 2023, when Manila and Tokyo began negotiating a reciprocal access agreement. Both nations, facing Chinese coercion in their respective maritime zones, shared an urgent need for interoperability. The RAA talks reflected a broader trend, the rise of minilateralism. Rather than waiting for ASEAN's consensus-driven diplomacy, countries like Japan and the Philippines turned to smaller, more flexible groupings to address regional security challenges. The Japan-Philippines-US trilateral was formally launched in April 2024 at a summit in Washington, consolidating defense coordination among the three partners. 2 months later, at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, another grouping, dubbed the Squad, was unveiled, bringing together the Philippines, the US, Japan, and Australia. By July 8, 2024, Manila and Tokyo had signed their RAA, streamlining the deployment of forces for joint operations. The first activity under the agreement, Doshin Bayanihan 525, took place soon after at the Benito N. Ebuen Air Base in Mactan, focusing on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Marcos's outreach didn't stop there. Between January and April 2025, Manila finalised a SOVFA with New Zealand, while also deepening ties with Canada through the 2024 Defence Cooperation Memorandum of Understanding. Negotiations on a full SOVFA concluded in March 2025. Europe too is joining the network. In June 2025, the Philippines and France began VFA talks in Paris, making France the first EU nation on track to secure such an agreement. The United Kingdom soon followed, expressing interest in a SOVFA later that year. Each of these deals serves a larger purpose, to make the Philippines not just a security recipient, but a regional connector. In an increasingly volatile Indo-Pacific, Manila is positioning itself as a key node linking democratic powers through shared commitments to freedom of navigation, deterrence, and the rule of law. As the South China Sea simmers with rival drills and rising risks, one thing is clear: the Philippines is no longer just a spectator in the great power contest. It's becoming one of its central players.